children lost to gun violence.
Please let me hold on to these memories because that's all I have.
Our special series, The Gunfight, focuses in on the youngest victims and the effect these shootings have. Turning now to our week-long commitment, examining guns in Georgia. Today, gun violence and children.
It is especially tough when you see a young life lost.
And I will never forget you.
A mother's anguish as she remembers her son. In their own words, parents of some of the littlest victims of gun violence. Next, as The Gunfight, our special series, continues.
But first, what our investigation found and a look at some of the numbers behind gun deaths. In 2010, 6 men per 100,000 were victims of gun deaths. Also in 2010, compare that to 1 woman per 100,000 that same year. You're watching CBS 46 News at 4. As we continue our special series, The Gunfight, some staggering numbers we've uncovered. In 2013, 55 Georgia children were victims of homicide. 19 of them died from gun violence. And today at 4, we focus on the children, the most vulnerable victims of gun violence, the littlest victims.
As CBS 46 This Morning anchor Gloria Neal shows us, they are the ones with the most to lose because really they have the most in life to look forward to.
A bullet. How can something so small change so many lives? After all, a bullet doesn't know who it's meant for or why it's being sent. What is known? Once it gets to its intended target, no one, young or old, will ever be the same.
Caller states they were fighting, 1 shot heard.
The youngest among us. Those victims, the ones with the most to look forward to.
My most valuable thing in life is being a mom. I love being a mom.
Those shootings are the hardest shootings to take.
If people knew the pain that it causes families.
It is quite upsetting that kids can put their hands on a weapon without even knowing the impact that that weapon has.
Eusebio and Lorona Phelps are unwilling members of a club no parent wants to be a member of. It was 2 years ago, November 2nd, that their son, Sammy, was killed by someone with a gun. Lorona says she remembers it like it was yesterday.
Finish this sentence for me. If I had known that that was the last time I'd speak to my child, what would you have said?
I think if I knew that that would be the last time, that I talked to Sammy. Oh, Sammy, I will never forget you. Like I hold him in my heart.
According to the Justice Department and the CDC, children in the United States are 14 times more likely to die from being shot than in any other country. And that number is even higher for Black and Latino children. There were just over 32,000 gun deaths in this country back in 2011. And of those deaths, 591 were ruled accidental. And of those, 102 were younger than 18. And 50 of those were younger than 13 years of age. Those are the latest numbers the government has on record. Since then, there have been thousands of young lives lost, leaving families scrambling to find a new normal.
Do you ever think about what he would have been and how he would have looked on his wedding day? All those things.
I think about it all the time. It's amazing. Just last week, I was having a conversation with one of my clients, and she asked me, Lorena, what's the hardest part of all of this? I said, the thoughts of what could have been.
But gun deaths affect more than just the families.
A lot of times when officers get on the scenes of young children that are injured and hurt or stuff like that, it does affect them differently.
Lieutenant Canton with the Atlanta Police Department says that's one reason they started a peer group within the department.
Our peer group is just there so that way they have a fellow officer to talk to who's been there before, who's seen that before, who knows what that person's going through, and then can talk to them, help them decompress.
Lorona also started a group.
Mothers Against Guns and Gangs. And I had no clue, you know, because there's no manual on how to start these type of things or how to do this. I had no clue, but I knew the more I actually put my hands into it, the better I felt.
He shot him in the back 5 times.
Angela Washington became a member after losing her son, Ryan. She says it doesn't matter if you have kids. The gun problem is everyone's problem.
We have to be more focused on our children and our next door neighbor children and my children down the street. I think that's where we lost it as a community.
When you pull that trigger, there is no coming back from that.
And even though police officers can't make the law, Lieutenant Canton says he understands why officers get frustrated when a child loses their life because someone didn't lock up a weapon.
Secure the weapons to protect your family. Do what you can to protect your children. Make sure your children, hey, they know what's there, and tell them what it's for. So that way they don't find it and think it's a new toy and play with it.
I did not want to be a member of this club.
For more information about Mothers Against Guns and Gangs, as well as how to keep your gun out of the hands of children, go to our website, CBS46.com. Just click on the web link for The Gunfight. Gloria Neal, CBS 46 News.
And our comprehensive coverage continues. Coming up, all new at 5 o'clock, we'll have a reality check on so-called gun-free zones. Are they truly ripe for mass shootings? It's a story you won't see anywhere but right here on CBS 46.
Also at 5, the truth about safety locks on guns. Do they really prevent gun violence? Our Harry Samler investigates. Then the politics of guns in our state. Our Sally Sears with a closer look at that. It's all new at 6.
At 4:30, a closer look at what some are calling the violent generation. The gunfight and the so-called violent generation.
We take a closer look at what's behind the shoot first mentality and ways of changing that behavior with a local man who has lived it, and he turned his life around. The gunfight, we are digging deeper into the most dangerous age group in the country when it comes to gun homicides. It is young people ages 18 to 34.
Department of Justice stats show this, that for every 100,000 people in 2010, homicide rates were 10.7 for people ages 18 to 24 and 8.1 for people 25 to 34. But then look at this, the rates less than half of that for 35 to 49-year-olds and just 1.4% for people over the age of 50.
Mike Dunstan investigates the young people behind the violence.
It's really sad that it's so easy to remember the names and faces of young people who've become the victims and suspects of recent gun violence here in Metro Atlanta. Remember this, in Gwinnett County, a gas station becomes the Wild West with young men pulling out guns and unloading bullets. And remember this shooting at Bay Creek Park where police arrested this 19-year-old. This 22-year-old is accused of shooting 10 people at a club in Meriwether County over a gambling dispute. College football player Wally Clanton was shot to death at a pool party in Fayette County over the summer. And in DeKalb County, Shanika McCurdy.
She was taken out for no reason whatsoever other than just wanting to go in, get a lottery ticket, come out and mind her business.
And this gas station surveillance video shows her moments before 3 teens allegedly tried to steal her car, shooting and killing the 25-year-old barber.
What is in the mindset right now of our youth that they feel like guns are the first thing that they need to have as a line of defense or just to have on them at all?
The conversation at this IBX internet radio show in Norcross, disregard for human life and gun violence in Metro Atlanta. The killing of Shanika McCurdy upset Omar Howard so much, he stood outside the scene of the crime holding this sign. Today, he's a radio guest and a chaplain with Atlanta's Transitional Center. It's a minimum security prison on Ponce in Midtown Atlanta. More than 250 inmates live here.
The first thing that people talk about is, I'm through fighting. Right. I'm going to get a gun.
But don't let the button-down shirt fool you.
It's just part of the street life. When I told you when I went to prison.
You heard him right. He used to be an inmate too. And he can talk the talk because he's walked the walk in prison. Locked up for 15 years in a 5-foot by 10-foot cell.
You haven't been back in 20 years.
Well, I really didn't want to revisit those memories.
Omar took me back to the Lithonia neighborhood that landed him in the big house.
Because going up that hill was the worst decision I made.
Up this hill and in this apartment complex, his and other lives changed in an instant.
You parked back here.
We parked back here, and we was trying to look for a house to break in, not knowing, that somebody was going to die that night, but, we was just trying to get money. We just wanted some money.
He says, just like today, 20 years ago, guns were easy for him to get, but here's what's changed.
A lot of these kids just are fearless compared to us. When you even talk with a lot of kids about prison, they're not even afraid of it.
So I went to Kennesaw to ask young adults about Omar's theory.
Maybe our generation is a little more desensitized, but at the same time, you have to be kind of desensitized because you see stuff like that all the time.
They see it on the video game, so of course they don't think anything of it, but when someone actually becomes a witness to gun violence or something like that, it might harm them. Might harm them mentally.
I had a friend that was murdered last fall.
And that wasn't the only friend Devontae Hughley lost to gun violence. The Kennesaw State University student had to send condolences to the families of 2 other friends. He thinks young people need to hear more about the consequences.
Tell the story when, you see the police pulling up in your yard and they're taking you out in handcuffs and you're getting in the backseat of their car.
But in the beginning, Mike, they don't care. I mean, a gun is a gun to them. A gun is for protection. A gun is what my friends have.
We met LaTanya Askew at the internet radio station, too. She's a Metro Atlanta attorney and says her young clients don't believe the seriousness of gun violence until they hear the charges or they see the financial bind their parents are put in, coming up with money for bond or to pay a lawyer. She doesn't see the violence slowing down until parents step up to the plate.
You were grown enough to make these children. Now you need to get involved in these children's lives. Checking their room, finding out what's going on in school, not blaming the teachers when students are cutting up in class.
I hated prison. I hated prison. We're heading to where I actually got locked up there.
Omar Howard took us back to the intersection of Marbut Road and Panola Road in Lithonia.
That was a terrible day for me.
Where cops caught up with he and his crew in February of 1993.
That's the last day I seen them freedom for 15 years. What happened in 1993 still affects me today, and it's 2015. As far as getting jobs, down to the point of trying to find a place to live. I just want to help young people to, make better choices. How many of y'all love being free? How many of y'all love being free?
And these days, he's looking to the future.
Because from 15 to 18, man, I was in and out of juvenile because I didn't want to do what was right.
Speaking to these students and mentoring adults who've been in his situation, for him, it's about giving back.
I want to, make sure that I can do what I can, whatever I can, to make a difference.
And working as a chaplain here at the Atlanta Transitional Center, Omar Howard is grateful for the grace and the redemption that's been given to him. In Midtown Atlanta, Mike Dunstan, CBS 46 News.
And by the way, Omar Howard started a nonprofit organization called Freedom is a Choice. It's a mentoring program designed to make positive differences in the lives of troubled and at-risk young people. And in light of mass shootings, so many people have asked the question, are those so-called gun-free zones ripe for mass shootings? What's the truth behind the numbers? Reality check ahead. When I say mass shooting, there is something that immediately comes to mind, a very specific kind of public, media-focused, random killing of innocent people by a gunman. Is it true that those kinds of killings are virtually all taking place in an area called a gun-free zone? And if so, are these gun-free zones actually ripe for mass shootings? This is a reality check you won't see anywhere else. The debate over gun-free zones is a heated one. Conservative media, after a shooting like the one at the Umpqua Community College in Oregon, immediately begin to say that we need to consider gun-free zones as part of the problem. Media on the left fires back that those claims are simply untrue. Take, for instance, an article published by Media Matters for America. It states this, quote, "Despite claims about gun-free zones, the overwhelming majority of mass shootings actually occur where guns are allowed to be carried." So where are the numbers to back that statement up? Well, it actually comes from a report from a group called Every Town for Gun Safety. That report was published last year. It states that only 14% of mass public shootings take place in gun-free zones, only 14%. Every Town claims that 86% of such incidents occurred in places where guns are allowed. The only problem with that analysis is that according to the Crime Prevention Research Center, the Everytown analysis is wrong. Very wrong. See, Everytown's recent analysis of mass shootings is riddled with errors. Mistakes are made on a number of mass shootings, as well as the extent of mental illness, the killer's ages, and even where the attacks occurred. So what are the correct numbers? Well, in order to get them, Crime Prevention Research Center looked at mass public shootings since the beginning of 2009. They focused on attacks that have particularly terrified Americans, the mass shootings that take place in public places. These are shootings about which they say the point of such crimes is to kill as many people as possible and create as much carnage as possible in order to obtain media attention. Also, they focused exclusively on shootings, excluding such attacks as the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing. They also exclude gang violence and turf wars, again focusing only on mass shootings designed to create terror. In those cases, what did they find? Well, from January of 2009 through the middle of July of 2014, there were 25 mass public shootings where at least 4 people were killed with a gun. Of those shootings, 8% of mass public shootings have occurred in places where civilians are allowed to defend themselves. But the other 92% happened in a so-called gun-free zone. Aside from those statistics, consider what some of these mass shooters themselves have said. Elliot Roger, who shot to death 3 people in Santa Barbara, explained why he picked his target. In his 141-page manifesto, he said that he chose to skip at least one location for the shooting because he worried that someone with a gun, specifically armed police, might stop him before he could kill enough people. Or James Holmes, the killer at the Colorado movie theater. He lived within a 20-minute drive of 7 movie theaters that were showing the premiere of the Batman movie. But he chose the one single theater that banned guns. And possibly the most shocking example to people, the Fort Hood shooting in 2009, where 13 people were killed, 30 others were wounded. Or the Washington, D.C. Naval Yard shooting where 12 people were killed and 8 wounded. Or even the Navy Recruiting Center in Chattanooga, Tennessee earlier this year, where 4 Marines were killed. All 3 military installations that are gun-free zones, with the exception of military police who are allowed to be armed. So what you need to know is that, first of all, there's no way to really know if most of these shooters knew they were in gun-free zones or if they targeted those areas because of it. But the question is not just a fair one, it's an important one. Are these zones, which are designed to make people safer with the best of intentions, actually making the victims of these attackers easy targets? Take the politics out of it so that we can have a real discussion here about whether or not gun-free zones are actually accomplishing what they're meant to do, or if they're making more victims than they need to. That's Reality Check. Let's talk about that tonight on Twitter.
Well, much more to come as the gunfight continues right here on CBS 46.
Here's a look at what's still to come. Tonight on the news at 11, Ben has another reality check. This time looking at concealed carry laws. Just how common are they? And do they really lead to less crime in our communities?
But first, just minutes away on the news at 5:30, the truth about safety locks on guns. Investigative reporter Harry Samler takes a closer look to see if they really prevent gun violence.
Plus, we promised you this one. It's an important part of the gunfight. Safety locks. Would you really know how to use one if you needed to? And do they actually prevent firearm-related deaths? Investigative reporter Harry Samler takes a closer look. And then later, our CBS 46 contributor weighs in on the gunfight as well.
I'm Lynn Vaughn, tonight at 5:56 on Just a Minute on CBS 46 News. After the Charleston church massacre, I asked a poignant question about guns. Tonight, I put it to you again.
Our coverage of the gunfight continues.
And next, the truth about safety locks on guns. Investigative reporter Harry Samler takes a closer look to see if they really prevent gun violence.
The gunfight continues here on CBS 46. Tonight, we're looking at safety.
That's right. Just like driving a car, at some point there's a chance you might forget some of the basics. Gun safety courses are not required in Georgia, but anyone who's ever taken one knows that you always treat a gun as if it's loaded.
Yeah, but what about gun locks and the new technology for smart guns? Consumer investigative reporter Harry Samler went to the experts for answers.
The case of the Ackworth 2-year-old. On October 27th, he found his dad's gun lying on a bed and shot himself. He
he died.
It's heartbreaking to think that, you're going to wake up and not see that baby again, I just could never imagine.
10 days earlier, someone dropped a gun inside this Dallas, Georgia home, an 8-year-old dead and her mom hospitalized. The New York Times looked at the number of kids killed by guns under age 15. Out of 5 states, Georgia was at the top.
My name is Jonathan Crandall. I'm the director of training.
Could these shootings have been prevented? Well, that is why these people are learning how to defend themselves with a gun.
There's a rule for each finger.
And how to defend themselves from their own guns. Handgun 101 at Stoddard's by Atlantic Station. Tammy Clark did some training through the ROTC.
So that's as far as my education goes. So I felt like I needed to get re-educated.
Ty Williams has 2 kids.
I was not going to acquire a gun without having some type of training.
And Rose Hansen, who doesn't own a gun at all.
So why take the class?
Just to learn about how to use one properly if I were to ever need to.
Okay, so maybe muzzle down is the safe direction.
Everyone here is taking the class voluntarily because gun safety class in Georgia is not mandatory. Ken Bay is one of Stoddard's owners.
Education is at the top of our list.
Rule 1, handle all firearms as if they are loaded. We could spend a lot of time on rules, but one thing is certain, a gun that is locked can't shoot.
These are all just different locking systems. So this allows you to lock a shotgun. This allows you to lock a rifle.
The locks are affordable and easy.
This is a trigger lock, and this particular one allows you to tighten it with this key.
Here's one that won't allow you to load a magazine.
In order for this gun to function, the magazine needs to be in the gun.
But what if someone breaks into your home? You need access fast. The solution, the electronic gun safe.
They're very quick to open. This is just programmed to 1, 2, 3, 4, but you can obviously program it however you want.
There's one other solution, but not available in the U.S. The Smart Gun, a gun that recognizes its owner's fingerprint or unlocks wirelessly through a ring or a signal from a watch. Not popular with gun rights groups. Ken Bay with Stoddard's likes the technology. However,
I think there are so many guns in circulation today, a few 100 million guns. The genie's out of the bottle.
Obviously, last month's tragedies would not have occurred if there had been no gun in the home at all. But in homes where the decision has already been made, tragedies like these would not have happened if the right safety measures were in place. Harry Samler, CBS 46 investigates.
And be sure to stay with us as our week-long look at the gunfight continues. Just minutes from now on CBS 46 News at 6, investigative reporter Sally Sears looks at the politics of guns across the state of Georgia.
Then on the news at 11, I'll have another reality check for you. You're not going to see it anywhere else. Tonight, we're going to talk about concealed carry laws. Do they really lead to less crime?
Opinions expressed during Just a Minute are not necessarily those of CBS 46 News or its employees. If you want to comment, you can go to CBS46.com and click on the Just a Minute tab. Comment there or on the CBS 46 Facebook page, or send us an email at justaminute@cbs46.com.
The gunfight continues here on CBS 46 News, and tonight's contributor doesn't have just another sobering statistic, but also a demand for change, what she believes could save lives. Here's Lynn Vaughn.
Since the debut of Just a Minute, there have been 161 mass shootings in America, 184 people killed. That's according to shootingtracker.com. Since June 15th, when we began these commentaries, and October 25th, the date of these figures, each day, 1 person killed, 5 injured by people with guns. Americans have done a great job getting rid of things that hurt us. You can't smoke in public places. As a result, only 18% of U.S. adults smoke now, compared to 42% in 1964. You can't drink and drive. You can't peddle unsafe food products or prescription drugs, because all of these activities can cause harm to human beings. Yeah, people break the laws, but what's important is that we recognize the need for them and have them in place. But guns are the exception. Anyone, anywhere can get his or her hands on a gun just about any time. Clearly, our laws don't go far enough, or we wouldn't lead the world in mass shootings and gun murders. We're going to fix this one day, but I ask you again, how many more of us have to die before we do? I'm Lynn Vaughn.
Tonight, we continue our look into gun ownership, gun violence, and gun laws here in Georgia.
Tonight, following the money trail, we've tracked NRA contributions and where they went in Georgia. We call it the politics of guns.
But first, Pew's survey on households with guns revealed the South leads the nation with 38%, followed by the West, Midwest, and Northeast.
All this week, we're looking at gun laws, gun violence, and the gun culture in Georgia in a series of special reports we're calling The Gunfight. America is a gun-rich nation, and Georgia one of the most gun-friendly states.
Well, as the nation reeled from deadly assaults on schools, President Obama called for stricter gun laws, and Georgia passed a law and celebrated fewer restrictions on guns. Tonight, CBS 46 investigator Sally Sears tells us Georgia is among the least regulated gun states in the country.
Gentlemen, I'm not going to allow any trouble.
Nothing like a gunfight. And none more memorable than the shootout at the OK Corral. My favorite is Doc Holliday. In real life, he was a dentist from Georgia. Modern-day Doc Hollidays elect politicians who love gun rights.
Is it a coincidence that many politicians in this red state get support from the gun lobby year after year? We tracked contributions from the National Rifle Association flowing into Georgia political coffers.
May God bless our great country.
Retired Senator Saxby Chambliss is among the top 20 politicians in the nation taking money from the NRA. $128,000 lifetime dollars. Georgia's Republican House members, in order, Lynn Westmoreland, Tom Price, Jody Heiss. Now, South Georgia Democrat Sanford Bishop took $47,000. But for the rest of the Georgia Democrats, little or no NRA money.
When national votes on guns are cast, Georgia politicians typically vote along party lines. But I've covered elections and politics here in Georgia for years, and I can tell you at the Gold Dome, just about everybody supports gun rights, Democrats and Republicans alike.
The National Rifle Association praised Governor Deal's signing what it called the most comprehensive pro-gun legislation on April 23, 2014. Gun control advocates call it the Guns Everywhere bill. It makes it easier to carry guns in parts of airports, bars, school zones, even churches. Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle says the new gun law is working. House Bill 60 was a great step forward in this effort to protect and defend all Georgians, says his spokesman. And now here's an interesting twist. While the places Georgians can carry guns are expanding, gun ownership around the nation, and even in Georgia, appears to be dropping. Data from research funded by the National Academy of Science shows gun ownership is down to 22% from a high of 31% in 1985. But as fewer Americans own guns, support for gun rights is rising. In fact, it's tipped. For the first time ever, Pew Research reports more Americans say protecting gun rights is more important than controlling gun ownership. On this single point, most politicians in Georgia are on the same side as the trends in opinion polls. Sally Sears, CBS 46, investigates.
Well, much more of our gunfight series ahead. Tonight at 11, I'm going to bring you a reality check. We're going to look at the issue of concealed carry licenses. Do more concealed carry weapons lead to less crime? You might be surprised by what we found. Join us at 11.
And if you've missed any of our reports, you can check them out at CBS46.com and on our mobile app. You can also give us your take on the gun debate through our social media channels.
In our special series, The Gunfight, we ask this question. Do concealed carry laws really lead to less crime? We break down the numbers to see if there's a correlation between the two, and we tell you who stricter gun laws really affect.
It is difficult to report on the killings of children and young people, and that is part of the reason for CBS 46's unprecedented look at guns in the U.S. A question we're trying to tackle tonight: could more guns in the right hands be part of the answer?
Well, throughout the debate over guns in America, there are many different numbers and stats that can be referenced. But tonight, we ask the question, is it true that more guns equals more crime? What about states that have concealed carry laws? Is gun crime in these locations lower than in places where concealed carry is not allowed? This is a reality check you won't see anywhere else. Now, concealed carry laws are a fairly interesting part of the gun debate in America. For a nation that has a Second Amendment since its founding, it might be surprising for you to know that concealed carry laws have only been in place since the 1980s in most states. And for other states, concealed carry has only existed for the last couple of years. So the question, does arming more law-abiding citizens lead to lower gun crime? Before we can answer that, let's talk about what's happening with concealed carry permits. Since 2007, the number of concealed handgun permits in the United States has soared from 4.6 million to over 12.8 million. During that same period, murder rates have fallen from 5.6 killings per 100,000 people to just 4.2. That's about a 25% drop. This is according to a brand new report from the Crime Prevention Research Center. Now, nationally, yes, without question, the number of people carrying concealed weapons has almost tripled. And during that same period, murder rates have dropped by a quarter. But remember, correlation does not always equal causation. So is there a better example that we can look at? Well, there is. How about Chicago? Chicago is a city with one of the highest gun murder rates in the nation. According to the FBI, in 2012, Chicago had 500 murders, the most of any city in the country. In fact, Chicago has been among the top 3 cities with the most murders since 1985. But it was not until 2013 that Illinois became the 50th state, yes, the last state in the nation, to finally pass a concealed carry law. So what happened to gun murder rates in Chicago? Well, since Illinois started granting concealed carry permits, the number of robberies that have led to arrests in Chicago declined 20% in 2014 from where they stood in 2013. That's according to police department statistics. Reports of burglary and motor vehicle theft dropped 20% and 26% respectively. In the first quarter, the city's homicide rate was at a 56-year low. And it is worth mentioning that in just 2014, 91,000 concealed carry permits were issued across the state of Illinois. That includes 24,000 which were issued for Cook County, which includes Chicago. And we should mention that this year, in 2015 in Chicago, those violent crime rates are on the rise once again, despite concealed carry. But what you need to know here is that while there's no way to prove that concealed carry guns cause crime rates to fall, the numbers do prove that in places where more people have concealed carry licenses, crime rates do not necessarily rise. One other really interesting stat to share with you, though. You know, people like to say that tougher gun laws only affect law-abiding citizens. But when it comes to concealed carry, that may be absolutely true. Statistically, consider this. Concealed carriers are among the most law-abiding citizens in the country, even more so than police officers. In Florida and Texas, permit holders are convicted of misdemeanors or felonies at 1/6 of the rate that even police officers are convicted. That's Reality Check. Let's talk about that tonight on Twitter.
We continue the series, The Gunfight, now tomorrow at 4. Bobby Capel tells us about how Kennesaw is making its citizens stay armed.
And tomorrow I'll talk about other nations that have gun bans and do mass confiscations to prevent gun violence, specifically Australia and Great Britain. Does it work there? Would it work here? It's a Reality Check you'll only see tomorrow at 5. And then tomorrow at 6, we dig deep into the mental health myth. Kim Passoff looks at mental health issues and their relation to mass shootings and other gun violence.
And so often we talk about the people who die from gun violence, rarely those who survive. Kim also brings us the story of the walking wounded. That's tomorrow night at 11.